Hi everyone, this is Aria back with a new tutorial. This one's a little bit more abstract art, but there's a lot of fun things going on here, so I think you'll enjoy it. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so open up a new scene in Blender and you can just select everything and hit delete. Next we'll hit Shift A and we're going to add an icosphere. We can hit S to scale it and type in 3 and then click to set that. Next let's right click and shade smooth. We can come over here to the modifiers properties here. Click here and we can add a subdivision surface and we're going to set both the render and the viewport to 2. So now that we've got that, let's toggle into X-ray mode here just so we can see through our mesh here. Shift A to add a new mesh and we'll click icosphere again. Before we click away, let's go here and let's change the subdivisions to 1. Next we can hit tab to go into edit mode, or of course you can click here and go into edit mode that way. Next we'll hold control and we can hit B and then we're going to type in 0.05 and then hit enter. Next we can hit tab to go back into object mode here, or just click object mode there. We can right click on our new icosphere and shade smooth. Okay, so now that we've got our first object here, we're going to start adding a few things to it. So just bring your mouse up to the top corner here until you have this little plus symbol, and we're going to click and drag to open up a new window. And now we can change our second window here over to the graph editor. And you can see that there is no information here. So what we want to do is make sure that we go to frame 1 and then we can hit I to bring up the keyframe menu. And in this case, the thing that we want to keyframe is the location. So click there. And now you'll see that if we click this arrow here, we've got a keyframe on the X, Y, and Z locations. Okay, so what we want to do is add some motion to our inner icosphere here. So let's hit N to bring up this menu on the side. And on the edge here, we're going to click modifiers to go into the modifiers tab here. Let's click on the X location and we can click this little drop down and click noise. So now you'll see if we hit play, we've got this very fast jittering object, which is not at all what we want. So we want to make that slower and we want to make the movements larger. So we're going to use our scale here. And we can drag this over till we're happy, say around 20, which should work. We'll also change our strength to somewhere around 5. And now if we hit play, you can see that it has a lot smoother motion to it. So now we want to add that to the other two axes here. So instead of redoing that, what we can do is just click copy F modifiers here. So now when we click on the Y location, we can just click this here and it will paste it in. But we don't want it to be exactly the same, so let's just click the face here and we can click and drag till it's looking a little bit different. And if you want, you can also change the depth, which will just give it kind of more detail as it's moving along. You'll see that there's a bit more of a jitter there. Alright, so let's copy that one more time here and we can click the Z location. We're going to paste again. And one more time, we just want to change our phase just so we've got a different waveform here. And that should work great. Alright, so let's go back to frame 1 here, and now that we've got our animation set up, we can go over to the physics properties here and we want to add collision. So we'll go down to the thickness here and we're going to change that to 0.05 just so that when we add the cloth simulation, nothing is crashing through. Alright, so now that we've got all the animation done, what we're going to do is hit G to move. And we're just going to move our mouse just up towards this edge here, just so that all of our icospheres are not in the same place. You'll see here that it's kind of poking through the edge, so you can just kind of come around, hit G again, and just bring it back inside, just till it's completely inside the larger sphere. And once you're happy with the position, you can hit I again to open up the keyframe menu, and we're just going to rekey the location. And now when we hit play, you'll see that it starts from the position that we placed the new keyframe. Alright, and just go back to frame 1 again just to make sure. If you do have part of the mesh sticking out, what you can do is just quickly go to whichever axis seems to work best. In this case, we'll use the Y axis, and you can just change the phase until it's back inside the object. Alright, and now if we go back to frame 1, you'll see that everything is sitting inside the sphere. Okay, so now we can create our second and third objects here. Instead of redoing everything that we just did, all we're going to do is hit Shift D and we can just drag our mouse again to the other side here. Click to set it and then we can just come around to the side here, hit G again, and we'll just move it a little bit over this way here. And when we're happy with our placement, we want to make sure that we hit I again and we're going to rekey the location. And now if we hit play, you'll see that it's doing exactly the same as the other one there. So what we can do is go back to frame 1, make sure that we've got the new icosphere selected, and we just want to change the phase on all of these. So change them quite a bit, make sure again that it's not poking through the mesh. Go to the X here, we can change the phase on that as well, and for the Z as well. Alright, so hit play and you can see now that they're doing very different things, which is what we want. So shift D one more time to create one more icosphere here. We can just come to the side and hit G to move our object closer to the edge here. And if you want, maybe you can bring this one up a little bit or down. It doesn't really matter. Alright, and then again, we want to change the phase for all of our axes here. So let's just... You'll see when I did that, it snapped back into place. So again, I forgot to keyframe it. So let's hit G just to move it over here. G again to bring it out here. And before we change the phase, we'll just hit I to update the location keyframe. So now we can go back to changing the phase on these. So let's go to the Y location here. And we can just change this till it's something very different. And we'll just change this, make sure it's inside. And that should be great. Alright, so hit play and you can see that you've got these icospheres moving more in a random fashion, which is what we're going for. Alright, so we can go back to frame 1 here, and since we're done with the graph editor here, we can right click on the center here, click join areas, and click over here to close that window. Okay, so now that we got all of those completed, we can click back onto the larger icosphere here. And we'll start creating our cloth simulation. So again, just make sure you're in the physics properties here and we can click cloth. So we're going to only change a couple things here. Depending on your system, we're going to change the quality to 15 for mine, but go as high as you can so it's not going super slow. But this value here should work for most setups. Alright, and then we can scroll all the way down past all these and leave them to default here. We're going to click pressure. And for our simulation here, what we want to do is have a inward pressure. So instead of having a positive value, we're going to type in -5. Then we'll open up collisions here. Let's scroll down and let's change our quality again to 15 or whatever your system can handle. We're also going to change the distance on this to 0.05. We can also activate self collisions here and just leave everything as default. And then the final thing we want to do is open up the fieldways here and we can change our gravity to 0. Awesome, so now if we hit play, you can see that we've got this kind of messy cloth looking thing here. So let's just pop out of X-ray mode here and we'll just take a look. You can see that it's pretty jagged, so we can click on our icosphere here. By the way, let's name this to cloth just so we don't get too confused. And we can leave the other 3 the same. Now if we go over to the modifiers property here, we're going to add a couple more subdivisions. So subdivision surface here, and we're going to set both the render and the viewport to 2 or 3. So now you'll see that it's looking a little nicer. So back to frame 1 here, and we can click back on the physics properties here, and you'll notice that it turns back into kind of like an icosphere, which is not really what we want. We kind of want to have it starting in a more natural position. So instead of having our simulation start from 1, we can type in -5. And now I'll just quickly bake. Don't do this, I just want to show you how it looks. I'll just bake a few frames here. And hit escape, and you can see now that when we're on frame 1, there's a more natural starting position. So I'm just going to delete that bake there, and now we can just bake our entire simulation. Once you've got everything set up, we can hit bake and move on to the next step. Awesome. Alright, so I did about 160 frames, so I'm just going to change mine to 150 here, just so I'm not doing a full 250, but feel free to extend your animation. And now that everything's done, we can just take a look at our simulation, and it's looking pretty good. So hopefully yours is looking good. If anything is crashing through with these icospheres here, just make sure to change the quality steps if you can, both for the cloth here and as well as the collisions. You can also try changing the collision distance to something a little higher, but if you go too high, you may start running into other issues. So the best bet, if you can, is to up the quality. Alright, so before we start creating the rest of the scene here, let's just quickly add some lighting here. So let's go to the world properties here, and we can click this little dot and go to environment texture. Click open, and then you can just find an HDRI on your computer. If you want to use the one that I'm using for this animation, you can go to hdrihaven.com and search for this one here. I will also throw the link in the description. Alright, and then click open. Now we can go up to the top here. We can go into our render preview. Then finally, let's just go over here to the materials property. We can click new. Let's change the roughness to something a lot lower, and we'll bring the transmission up to 1. If you're going to use Eevee, make sure to add screen space refractions here, and you'll also need to do that here in the render settings. So make sure that both of those are selected. And now you can see that we can sort of see through our cloth simulation. I am going to be using cycles for mine, but feel free to use Eevee. If not, you can click over to cycles and make sure if you've got a GPU to set that as well. Awesome, so now we can click on our icospheres here and we can go back to the materials property. Let's click new. We can change the color on this one to a blue color, and we can bring the metallic all the way up to 1 and the roughness down to around 0.2. We can select one of our other icospheres here. Let's hit new one more time and we can change the base color to a red color. Set the metallic to 1 and we can also bring the roughness down to around 0.2. Then for our final one here, we can click new and just bring the metallic up and the roughness down. Awesome, so that's looking really good. You can maybe find a better frame that you can take a look at. And then one more thing we'll do is just click on the cloth one more time. Let's go down here and let's also change the IOR to 1.33 and it'll give it more of a liquidy kind of look to it. You can also just play with the roughness as well until you're happy. Alright, so now we can go back into our viewport shading here and move on to our next step, which will be adding a Mantaflow simulation. So we can hit Shift A and click Cube. So let's hit S to scale, Shift Z to lock it to the X and Y axis, and we can type in 12. S again, Z to lock to the Z axis, and we can just drag it up till it's kind of the proportions that you want. And then G to move it, Z to lock to the Z axis, and we can just bring it down until it's just touching our cloth simulation. Alright, so we're going to use that as our flow object here, so let's just rename this to flow. And next we want to create our domain, so let's hit Shift D and hit Escape right away to duplicate our object. We can click here to rename it domain, and let's also turn on X-ray mode here just so we can see through here. Let's hit S to scale it, let's hold Shift and we can just drag till it's just a little bit larger than the flow object. Then we'll hit S, Z, and we can just drag our mouse until it's large enough to cover any splashing that you'll have with yours. Next we'll hit GZ and we can just bring it up till it's just underneath. Awesome, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as it's kind of near the edges here, you should be good to go. And now before we start our simulation, we just want to add a few more geometries to the scene just because they're going to be interacting with our liquid here. So let's hit Shift A and add a plane. And we can just spin around to the side here, hit G, X, and we'll just bring it back till it's just intersecting kind of at the back of the water here. Then we're going to hit R to rotate it, Y to lock it to the axis, and type 90. And now we can come back around to the front here. We can hit S to scale, and we can just drag our mouse until it's about the width of the domain here. Hit GZ to bring it up. Now let's just zoom out a bit, and we can hit S to scale, Y to lock to the Y axis, and we'll just drag it out till it's a little bit larger. This will just depend on the type of camera angles that you want to have, so just make sure it's wide enough to cover everything. So now we can hit Shift A, and let's click Cube. We'll hit GY to bring it over just till it's just at the edge of our domain here as well. Then we're going to hit SX, and we can just drag our mouse till it's about the same length as our domain. And then click. Alright, so hit G and then Z to move it along the Z axis, and we're just going to bring the top down to match the top of our flow object here. Then we can hit SZ and we can just scale it up until the bottoms are matching here. And again, this is all in your taste. You can change the way it looks in any way you want. This is just a basic setup. Alright, so hit Shift D, then we can hit Y to lock to that axis, and we'll just drag this over till it's on the other side and it's just slightly intersecting as well. Then one more time, Shift D, hit Y to lock to that axis, and we can just bring this over here, and then we can hit SZ to scale it and GZ to bring it up. Now the final thing that we want to do is just add a ground plane here. So Shift A will add one more plane. Then we can hit 3 to go into right orthographic here. Hit G, Z, and we can just drag this down till the dot is about matching the bottom here. Then we can just hit S to scale till it's about the size of the domain. And then finally SY just to scale it out on the Y axis. And now you can grab this wall here, hit GZ just to bring it up. So while we're at it, let's just quickly add textures to these objects here. They're super easy, so let's go into the shading tab here. We can click our back wall here, let's hit new. And for now, let's just go into our Eevee render engine here, just so we can see what we're doing in real time. Make sure to click on your render preview here, and now we can hit Shift A, and we're going to search for brick and select brick texture here. Let's hit Shift A again and we can search for bump. And then let's hook the normal up to the normal and the color up to the height. So now you can see that we've got our basic bricks here. So let's just change a few settings here just to make it fit our scene. So let's change this to around 10 or so. Then we can change the brick width to 0.3. And let's change the mortar size here to 0.01. And the mortar smooth, we can just crank this up a bit just so we've got a little bit more definition. Alright, so let's just add a couple more nodes here. Let's duplicate this bump here. So click and hold Shift and hit D to duplicate. Let's put the normal into the normal here. And we'll hit Shift A again. Type in Musgrave. And we can connect the Effector to the height here. Let's set the scale to 2. Let's set the detail to 16. Dimension to 0, and we can leave the lunacarity at 2. So now you can see that we've got this roughness here, so we can just bring the strength down to something a little bit lower. We can just switch back and forth to cycles if we want to just see what that will look like with full lighting. And that's looking good, so let's go back to Eevee here. Alright, so before we texture our walls here, let's just click and drag to select these two nodes, hold Control and hit C to copy. Now you can select the cube here, hit new, hold Control and hit V to paste, and we can just bring this up here and hook the normal into the normal. So now just make a note of which material it's using, which is 5. So let's just click this one here, click this little drop down, and we can click 5. Again, we'll click this wall here, click this drop down here, we'll click 5, and one more time we'll click our ground plane and material 5. Alright, and now we can head back to our layout tab here, and now we can start working on our simulation. So we're just going to add all of our objects into the simulation here. So if we click domain, head over to the physics properties here. Sometimes it doesn't show up, so just click it again here and you should have stuff show up. Click fluid and we'll click domain. Let's change the type to liquid and we'll change the resolution to 64. You can go higher if you want, but just for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to keep it a little bit lower. And I like to usually change the time scale at least a little bit. So let's set that to 0.8. As well for mine, I do change the time steps a bit, but for this tutorial, we'll just leave them as they are, just so things are a little bit quicker. Then we can scroll all the way down here. If you want to add diffusion, you can, just to change the viscosity of the liquid, but I'm just going to leave it off for now. Let's click mesh, open this here, and we can set this to 2 or 3. Then finally, let's scroll all the way to the bottom here, and we're just going to change the start and end frame to match our animation. Now we can start adding our other objects. So let's click on our flow object here. You can click up here if you want, if it's easier. Click fluid, click here, and we'll select flow. The only thing we need to change is the flow type to liquid, and everything else can be default. Alright, and then finally we want to click all of our walls and floors here and make them each an effector, leaving everything as default. Alright, so now that we've got all that, the last thing we need to do is add an effector to our cloth simulation. So let's click our cloth here. So we can click fluid one more time and change this to effector. Awesome, so now we're ready to simulate here. So let's just go out of X-ray mode here and we can click on our domain. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, what we can do is let's go to frame 1 And if yours didn't do what mine did, you can also just toggle here and click replay. Sometimes it can just take a couple clicks. If you ever run into trouble, you can always turn on and off mesh or re-click this here and it should reset everything and everything should show up correctly. Alright, and in Mantaflow, I'm not really sure why, but our flow object doesn't really do anything. It just sort of sits out here, so we can hide that by clicking this eye here. We can also add a couple more restriction toggles here, our real time and render. And we just want to turn the render off, but let's leave the real time on here just so it calculates part of the simulation. Alright, so we can click on our liquid here, right click and shade smooth. Now that we're here, we just want to make sure that we move our objects in just a bit more, so hit GY to bring this wall in, just so it's just touching our simulation here. This side is looking good. Now you can shift click all of these here. Then just hit GZ to bring it up to match the bottom of our flow. Awesome, so now we can click on our domain here and we're ready to cache our simulation, so we can change this from replay to final. By the way, you can always go to modular here and bake everything separately if you want to make some separate changes. But for today, I'm just going to do mine with the final here, so it bakes everything all at once. And once that's finished baking, we can look at our final scene, alright? And since we've got our settings pretty low, this should only take a few minutes. Awesome, so now that that's complete, feel free to play through your simulation here. And that's looking pretty good. I actually prefer this to my other one. It's just sort of touching the water, which is kind of what I envisioned. So hopefully yours is at this stage here. And now we can sort of pick a frame that we want. Go back into our render view here and see the finished image. Alright, so let's go over here and let's switch over to cycles. And you can see the one thing that we forgot to do is add a shader for our water. So let's go over to our materials properties here, click new. We can bring the roughness down to 0. Let's set the IOR to 1.333 and bring the transmission all the way up to 1. Alright, we can click this here just to remove our overlays just so we can see a better picture. And I believe for mine, I changed the color of the water a little bit here. So I'm just going to click on that and give it a bit of a blue. Alright, so the final thing we can do is add our camera here. Let's turn our overlays back on just so we can see what we're doing. Let's hold Ctrl Alt and hit 0 to lock the camera to our view. So we can change the focal length to 35. And then just hit F3, type in walk, and we can click here just to activate our in-camera movement. Use the mouse to sort of orbit around, and you can use the arrow keys to move in and out. Alright, so I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial. I know it's a little bit different. If you have any issues, you can always send me a message in the comments, and I try to reply to everything that I see. I will be away next week, so I'm not sure if there'll be a tutorial on Saturday, but I will definitely have some type of video next week, so stay tuned for that. Then after that, we'll be right back on schedule with tutorials every Saturday. Alright, so I'll see you then. Bye!